Ready to rock.
Do you think we got it? Do you think we did it? Well, whatever. Even if we totally fucked it up, it doesn't really matter.
We're doing it.
We're doing it.
Here we are. We're doing it. I've got my camera.
So let's talk about how you still can't get laid.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
Item number one. Yeah.
First thing that comes to mind for me is, we were just talking about this, but how much easier a house party is, right? Like, so you and I have been doing just straight up good old-fashioned cold approach, doing our thing. House party, way easier.
Yeah. So we went to a party last night.
Okay.
Let's set the stage. So
Okay.
Todd and I, we both had long weeks.
Where's my camera? Is that your...
It's
Okay.
hard to know. We both had, long weeks, very productive, busy weeks. A lot of...
Productive is a gracious term, but yes.
Productive is, it's pretty subjective. However, we did stuff. And
Yes.
we were very much in our left brains doing businessy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of things,
Yeah.
lots of tasks and things like that. And
So that's the energy and the vibe going in. So, like, let's just pause on that real quick. So I feel like for a lot of men that are single, they work a lot and they're very linear and they have a lot of work to do. And then they try to switch out of that to, like, okay, like this other part of my life, which is relationships with the opposite or same gender, whatever. And that transition can be really difficult, where you are working all week, you're fucking stressed, you have a ton of cortisol in your system, you're very linear, and then you're going to try to get into a social mood to, like, flirt with girls,
Right.
in which they have, like, zero fucking patience for logic and, like, just your like stress bullshit, which is fine, like, is what it is. So getting switched over to that. So I felt like shit this week. Like, I'm super stressed, like a ton of stuff going on. And I know when the weekend rolled around, I had no interest in going out or being social or doing anything. And in my head, I was like, this is a fucking waste of time. I don't want to do this. Like, I'm in a bad mood. I'm stressed. I just want to sit on the couch and I want to veg out. So I want to honor that for a lot of men, they do feel that way come Friday. Mm-hmm. And I felt that way too. And I want to hear what worked for you, but what really works for me is just acknowledging, like, hey, I feel like shit. I don't want to do this. I'm not in the mood for this. And I know that when I do it, I will feel better. Like, we feel way better right now than we did on Friday.
Sure.
Coming straight off of, like, the very man linear work. And, I didn't want to go out Friday. I was fucking tired. And then we're, like, hanging out Saturday to get ready to go to this party. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. I feel like shit. My business is a mess. My money's a fucking mess. Like, all the rest of my life is a mess, and I'm convinced that I just need to stay in and fix it. I just need to fix the fucking problem. And one of the frames that you and I have is when you go out and you're social and you open your brain up, you are going to open up your thinking. And, like, you're going to open up your aperture and, like, switch from being very myopic to being more open and perceiving things differently. So I just want to acknowledge that for a lot of men out there, they're like, dude, you don't get it. My money's bad, my business, like, I have all this shit to focus on. And I just want to, like, draw a line in the sand that me also, right? Me too. Me also. Me
as well.
Me as well. Me as well.
That's the hashtag.
That there's an acknowledgement that by switching lanes into the more expansive, that it will actually help me in those other things. I've already been focused on those things.
Right.
So what's your feeling on that?
So, I mean, the tendency is to be like, well, once I get everything sorted, then I'll go out and meet someone
Then
and
I'll go out and meet
learn
someone.
relationships and how to talk to women or whoever you're interested in.
Talk about linear. This is classic guys where they're like, I want to solve this one thing, and until I solve it, then I'll go out, and I don't feel good about myself.
Right.
And I don't feel good about my results in these other areas of life, and therefore I can't.
And there is an element of truth to that. Like I've suffered from that myself, right? Where if I feel unsuccessful, I feel like I'm not getting the things done I need to get done in my life.
Yeah.
Which has been,
feel or
years
are?
and years. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Objectively. And then finally, though, getting a little bit of momentum, finally getting a little bit of acknowledgement and a little bit of external, confidence, because like you can be really strong inside, but it's hard to pull that inside confidence without some sort of result to point to on the outside.
So I've dealt with this, and for years I was like, until I get my ducks in a row and everything is good, it won't make any difference. There's no point in doing it. And we have a common teacher. We've got a bunch of common teachers, but we have a common teacher that comes to mind that talks about this, which is what you're not seeing when you take that very linear approach of like, no. I just need to work, and until I get my ducks in a row, there's no point in me going out and dating. And what is really missing from that is the fact that your brain, by going out and being social and being nonlinear and like and like getting all of these other neurotransmitters, hormones, everything else going, you open up your brain's ability to go back to that problem set. I feel like, where's my camera? I feel like this is important for you guys, that even though you're very linear and even though you're working on things and even though that's what you're focused on, one of the biggest hacks that you're not using is by going out sober and talking and flirting and socializing. You open up your brain and you give yourself more capacity to go back to your actual problem set. So that's one thing that helps me flip, because I'm like, my brain is fucking convinced that I need to focus on this problem in order to solve it. No, Owen, you don't get it. My money's not good. My business isn't good. And you're like, dude, just go out. Like, not drink and do a bunch of fucking drugs and go out, but just go out, and it's going to shift your brain, and your brain fights it. So that's my feeling on it. What's your experience or your feeling?
I absolutely agree with that. By putting ourselves in these positions, it's opening up our creative capacity, right?
Spot on.
You cannot sit there and linear solve these problems. You need to open up. And there's a lot of ways to do that, right? Exercise, walk, meditate, do those types of things as well. But getting out and being social, to me, seems to be the thing that really...
Okay, you hit on something that I wanna double down on. It's not that linear doesn't work. It's that is 100% of your approach to your problem right now. And that by switching gears into this being social and bringing that creativity and that openness online, you're now shifting the balance of like linear approach and non-linear approach to what you're doing, and you're adding some of that in, which is why it's so effective. Yeah, you hit on something that I totally forgot about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a big part of it, right? Like, we're not just logical robot machines, right? Like, we're in our society, we're kind of shoved into this matrix, right? In order to perform that way.
Yeah.
And to be really effective, especially if you're an entrepreneur or you're working on something that you're passionate about, or, you're going out and dating, like, you need to be able to tap into that right brain. And that's going to make you feel more alive. It's going to give, and so it's easy to have the tendency of, oh, well, once I sort everything else out, then I'll work on this thing, and then I'll get, but that's never going to happen. It's like delaying happiness for later. Like, once I accomplish my goal, then I can be happy.
So there are two sides of this coin. One is them actually wanting to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, and the other is attracting a mate. And so what we're noting here is that we're not saying you don't have a to-do list. We're not saying don't be linear. We're saying that when you're trying to create the result that you want, linear is important, but homie, it's all that you're doing. And so you want to bring in the creative component and the non-linear. And this isn't even talking about the second component, which is the actual attraction of a mate and kind of the shame or whatever the guys will feel where they're like, well, I can't until I have everything perfect.
And then if you do have everything perfect, now you have zero social skills because you've spent all your time being in that linear.
How many of these bros, you meet them and it's like they are making way more money than us, but like fucking atrocious to be. It's like, dude, this isn't helping you. You know what I mean? Like you would benefit greatly from saying, how much of my time is nonlinear?
Yes.
how much of it is actually nonlinear, and what's my access to that? And there's tons of ways to do it. We're not saying that socializing is the only way to do it. And also, we are very social creatures. So I do feel like it is a very direct path, and I'm going to put the caveat in again, sober. Like taking your brain without any substances to change your state and shifting into nonlinear. Mm-hmm. Now, why is it that our brain fights us so much on that? Or what's your feeling on that?
I'm not really sure why. I think that whatever is happening, we just kind of continue in that momentum. So if it's like I'm used to kind of operating in this way, I become used to it.
But it's
sort of
so
like a
easy
muscle.
for guys to, like, most guys I see, it's not like most guys I see are nonlinear. It's not like I go out, I'm like, golly, man. It's just like if we could get a couple guys that want to do some to-do lists and like, but it seems like the guys, you know what I mean, go the other way.
Right.
And do you have any thoughts as to why that is or what's happening?
Well, I think that's a masculine drive. You know, we're creating infrastructure, providing, you know, and we feel fulfilled by that. But what's interesting about it is to add that other element in where the creative is, which is the feminine, you know, that right brain, like that's all the esoteric is saying. Left brain, masculine, you know, logical, right brain, creative, feminine.
And I want to make another point here. Like when we're saying left brain and right brain, some people will argue like, well, that's not true. So we're just using these labels as like, hey, these are colloquialisms. We understand there's different processing on both sides of the right and the left hemisphere. We're just using it for kind of your more linear, logical operation, and then kind of your more relational, open, non-linear creative space.
Yeah. The esoteric, you know, sort of idea of left and right brain. It's not necessarily exact.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's not get so linear that we miss the point.
It happens all the time. They're like, well, these guys don't know what the fuck they're talking about because...
Right.
Well, they don't even know how the brain works.
This is not a neuroscience podcast.
Yeah. We're not trying to do that. I mean, this is more what is the actual practical application of your brain and your neurology in the pursuits that are pretty common to us at the, you know, point in evolution that we're at, where you have work, you have family, you have dating, you have socializing, like just trying to bring all that in. So. Well, perhaps less important than why. What is your experience of it, and what? Because my brain will absolutely convince me that I'm an idiot and that nonlinear is a complete waste of time. Like it will. And do you have that experience? And if so, kind of.
Yeah, it's just for me. Like when I get into that mode, it's hard to get out. That momentum continues to carry. I've been staring at a screen. I'm looking at numbers. I'm solving things in in that fashion, and so that's when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You know, and so to juxtapose that and just find ways to open up and be more creative. That's where, in my opinion, at least in my experience as well, that's where the breakthroughs happen.
Yeah.
You know, you don't make discoveries by reading a book. You make discoveries because some download just dropped into your soul.
So someone will argue back saying, well, you do need some, you know, input of things into the system. So you're not saying never read and never take content in. You're just saying, hey, the actual creativity comes on the other side. So
there's space. There needs to be space.
Yeah. So part of what I'm thinking about is I feel like most people will resonate with this, like having a really good idea, like in the shower or on the walk, and like what's occurring there. Relatively, what's happened is you've loaded a bunch of information in, and then you've gone non-linear. You've completely unhooked that very linear, and then that's when it comes in. So I think what we're getting at with the going out, being social, sober is you're switching on that creative part. I'm not necessarily saying that you're going to be out sober flirting with girls and you're going to have a fucking business idea. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you're opening up a part of your brain. Could have. You're just like, hold that thought. You're trying to have sex with me? Hold the phone. Daddy's got to work. But I do feel like it opens up that part of your brain, and then you can have more of those moments of, you know, when you're just kind of chilling, an idea will come up. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. Yeah, and I think both parts are equally important to nurture. right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the tendency to, I'm going to get everything perfect and then it's like, no. You just need to chip away on this. Go out a night a week. Go out 2 nights, whatever you can do, whatever you can afford to spare, and get yourself into that feeling. Know that it's there. Know that you can open up and be fun and not be super logical and, boring,
Well, so yeah, you're not wrong.
I mean, I'm not.
No. So like the way that I trick myself into doing it is because my brain will say, no, you need to stay focused on the problem. You need to work hard, like the puritanical Mayflower fucking hat with the belt buckle. Like you have to like stay nose to the grindstone, Quaker Oats fucking guy. So you have to stay focused on that. And the thing that I use to get my brain off it is I go, okay, I know some amount of nonlinear is important. You can argue with me on the percentage, brain, but you can't argue with me that nonlinear creative space isn't important, right? It's like, right. I'm like, cool. So let's do it now then, because we've been in this space for a long time, haven't we? Yes, we have. Okay, cool. As far as whatever balance it is that you think percentage-wise going nonlinear helps, so that's how I talk my linear part of my brain into this is important. So that's how I switch my gears. I just I have a logical conversation with the linear part of my brain, not like fucking, out loud, but I'm like, you've been very, very linear. Nonlinear is important, and we haven't done it. If not now, when? We've already been in this energy and space for 3, 4, 5 days. Like a true balance would be 3, 4, 5 days nonlinear. But so like at a minimum, we got to switch. So that's kind of how I think and feel about it.
That's good.
How do you think and feel about it?
Well, so every day I practice nonlinear, and writing and stuff. And sometimes, depending on the type of
You are
writing,
much more creative than me, yeah.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do work in that field particularly, right? Like, and then there's all this business stuff that goes along with it. So it's like
your favorite part.
You think comedy, right, is like, oh, you're just all the time playing and making jokes, but people take it way too seriously. And also, there's a whole entire business that goes with it. Production, events, coordinating, communicating, yada, yada, yada. So it's a balance for me. And I know, because I've experienced the breakthroughs at times through that creative process. And I know that if I continue just doing that, then I'm going to get more. Like breakthroughs don't come because of you did one big thing. Breakthroughs come because of doing small things over time, and then you get that breakthrough. So it's not like something that you see the immediate result of very often. I mean, it can happen, but
it can happen.
Generally speaking, it's going to be like you chip away, you chip away, you chip away, you chip away. Oh, boom! You get a big insight, or you get a big idea. And so balancing those two things is something that I try to do on a daily if I can. I can't always go out.
You're different than me then, and I think a lot of whatever it's finance bros or whatever, they're like, dude, I'm straight linear all week.
All the time. Yeah, I'm talking on podcasts. I'm doing, things like that.
You're doing some other stuff,
and things like that, which are a little bit more. But I find that going out, it just makes that muscle more accessible, easier to start with, but I still have a hard time. Like, let's talk about last night and going to the party and all that. Cause like, I still have a hard time shifting,
I was like getting nervous for people over, and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't even want, you know what I mean?
I was so excited. And so I went out Friday too, which
that might have been part of the difference.
So part of the difference for me last night too, I'm tired. I'm running on almost no sleep. I had 3 hours of sleep on Thursday, rented my house out on Airbnb, I went out Friday and got like maybe 5 hours, and I had a really good time Friday. It was very social. It was very easy to talk to people. Halloween's a great time for that because they're in costumes. It's like, hey, I walked up to some girl who's like dressed up in construction garb. I'm like, you don't even bother to dress up. You just come right out to the bar afterwards, after you get off work. What's the matter with you? Yeah. And you're talking, you're riffing. What's your costume? If you don't know what it is, you can just ask. And so it's a great way to just open up a conversation with people and just start finding things to talk about. So I had a great time. Underslept again. Came down to Atlanta. House rented out. So I just watched some football, and I had all this momentum from Friday, but then right about, the time we're going out, my momentum is crashing. So I'm like, all the social momentum is starting to drain out, and now this moment that I've been so excited waiting for to go to this party, I'm kind of like a little bit lower.
Let's talk about that energy. Like, do you think that's real? Do you think that story's true? What do you think is occurring there? Like, you know, what, because like that is something that I can see happen to guys, you know, it's like they break out and then it's like the gravity or the energy of, you know, the linear type of thing comes back online. What's your experience with that?
Well, I think there's two types of energy. We have physiological energy and then, you know, whatever like the sort of spiritual energy is. And so the spiritual energy, from my understanding, is relatively infinite. It's about how much you can take on.
Yeah.
But the physiological energy is like, hey, we have to sleep, we have to eat, we have to drink water, blood sugar, we know all too well. So it's things like that, and just managing and setting yourself up for success, which I did not do all that well, right? Like if I could have gotten more sleep and maybe, you know, but again, when you're in that momentum, like it's hard not to carry. It's very hard to sleep.
I had to take a sleep med last night. Like we got home at like 4 a.m. and I'm like I went to bed at like 5, dude. Like it's not even. I was just like I can't sleep, and I'm like I just have to take something because I was just like so. No Red Bull, no nicotine, no Zyn, no alcohol, just straight sober. And I'm like, I can't sleep now. You know?
I've been like that a couple of times where like I just get flooded with, I don't know what the chemicals are, but you know, that social vibe, that social mood, and it feels so good. Like it really is. If you were to look at the Hawkins map of consciousness, it's like up there, you know, in the higher green, you know, and higher range where you're just like, this feels good. I want people, I want everybody else to feel good. Like ordinarily people that I might think about and be jealous about or envious about, like I'm like, I hope they're good. Like I'm in an energy through being social that makes me more expansive, more open, more loving. It's crazy.
Do you think that do you think it's us? Do you think that's because I can hear a lot of people in my head saying, hey man, like I'm an introvert and like that's just not the case for me. I don't get energy from social interactions. I know what I like, kind of what my feedback for them would be, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I am an introvert. I'm an INFP on my Myers-Briggs. So speaking as an introvert.
How much of a scale, like, were you, like, you know what I mean? Like, you, like, 8 out of 10 on the, like, you know what I mean? Are you, like, just barely around the introvert? Or, like, you pretty firmly on the introvert?
Well, the thing about, here's my beef, is, like, it's so easy to identify with anything now. So
label-wise, yeah.
As soon as someone's a this or a that, they make their whole personality conform to this idea.
We immediately go binary. Well, I'm this label.
I'm a Cancer. I'm an Aries.
Instead of, it's always a fucking continuum.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. And so I think that's the issue. If you're an introvert or if you're an extrovert, you can still gain a lot from going out and being social. Now, the way that you recharge your battery might be different. So you're an extrovert. So like it recharges your battery to be speaking with you. So if you're at home alone all week, you're like, oh man, I'm depleted, right? Me being home alone all week, I'm pretty fine with it. Like I need some social interaction, but like I'm good. You know what I mean? And like I'm charged up. Now I'm ready for the party on Friday or Saturday because I've had sleep. I've been at home. I've done.
So let me ask you this thing because I've always been curious about this like introvert extrovert thing. So like I'm relatively extroverted, but I'm also like I'm extroverted with an intent. Like if you just drop me off somewhere, yes, I'll chit chat, but I'm like, you know, I want to make some money. I want to date. Like when I have a girlfriend and we go out, I kind of chat with the other couples and I joke around a little bit, but it isn't the same amount. So that's one thing that I want to say, but I'm curious about this for you as an introvert because I don't know as much. My feeling or my perception of introverts is that, and I could be totally wrong here, so like internet, whatever, okay, just canceled immediately, is when I am social, my goal is to get out of my head and out of my body and not have any focus on me or managing any perception of me. And my feeling on introverts as to why they're like, this is draining, and I'm like, is it draining because it's actually draining? Or is there a level of like focus on self and like managing, you know what I mean? Like letting loose.
I think that's what it is. I think it's that that tendency to evaluate ourselves in the moment and be critical and have like, and that is just leaking energy.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if you took a person that's like labels as an introvert, and this is just a thought experiment, and you turned off that part of their brain that was critical or did any self-judgment or like really any monitoring of what they're saying outside of like just letting it rip, outside of, you know, just absolutely insulting someone right off the bat, and you really did turn that off, I wonder how many would still say, oh, it was so draining. And I'm like, are there introvert extroverts, or are there just people that are self-monitoring, more focused on themselves, and therefore it's draining them? And then they label these other people, because there are people that don't have any, like, you know, there are people that don't have any self-talk or any narrative.
Apparently.
And I'm like,
I don't know
I'm
that's
curious
possible,
what they're, I don't know how that is. I'm curious, like, if, like, any of those people are introverts then, because it's just, they're just flowing through the interaction.
I don't know. I mean, so my position is to be pretty much half in, half out when
That's
it comes to
what
this
he
stuff.
said.
Yeah, right. Just the tip.
Right.
That's all I'm going for. Because like, if you completely buy into something like I'm this person and I'm an introvert and blah blah blah, now, you're absolutely at the you know, mercy of whatever that definition that someone else wrote on a piece of paper.
Same for extroverts, by the way. So like, as much as introverts like, oh, it's easy for you guys, I'm like, what happens when an extrovert labels himself as an extrovert? Now they're not able to sit alone quietly and do the quiet tasks that like we all know are a part of life.
Sure.
Like, let's not pretend that like it just disenfranchises the introverts. It's like the extroverts as well. They label it like, oh, I just can't. I'm like, you're not an extrovert, homie. You're just a person.
You're a person.
You're just a person.
Like, that's it.
And you're flexible, and
Right.
like the more you adapt and the more you let go of this, the better.
I think, yeah, the way that I view it is looking at these definitions can help us understand ourselves better,
Like a
but
mirror.
should not define us.
Yeah.
And we
So
should not be susceptible.
That's such a. So I want to hammer in on this. Using them as a mirror for self-awareness to like get a read on yourself and get some context, and then immediately letting go of the label, because the label just absolutely, it limits and boxes you.
Yeah, it really doesn't even matter what it is, right? Like,
It
there's
really
a lot of
doesn't.
people like astrology and stuff like
Yeah.
that, which in the Enneagram, I love the Enneagram, very helpful tool.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I'm not going to pigeonhole myself with that.
Unless
or
it's
any
transurfing.
right. Well, I mean, you know.
Unless it's reality transurfing.
That's right. That's right. Well, that was just, you know.
Well, that really landed for you. That's a body of work that really landed for your
Yeah.
system. I also support that. Like, when someone really finds a body of work, I'm like, fucking milk it from that teacher and from that body of work.
Well, it explains so much and puts so much together. Like, I'm not a purist. Like, it's not like I can't read another model and be like, oh, this is a great model too. It's, in fact, it's like I really like synthesizing other things through it and with it, because all these books are essentially, in my opinion, saying the same thing. If you read the Bhagavad Gita or the Tao Te Ching, Reality Transurfing, the Kabbalion, they're all saying the same thing in different words. So, like, to be able to synthesize them and basically use different maps and models like Hawkins' map of consciousness and infuse that in there and learn other, you know, elements of reality, even the introvert, extrovert stuff, the personality typing, the Enneagram, like all that stuff's in my course. Like, I have all of those elements there. And it's fun to see like how it lines up and what your sort of like outline is as a person, but also to be able to disengage from that and choose, because ultimately volition, you have the right to choose in any moment. And that's, you know, that's the big point there too. So that's why I'm like, well, I'm not going to totally buy into this. I will use it for insight, and hopefully, you know, that'll help me understand myself better. But I'm making my own decisions here with free will.
I think it's okay to buy in. Like, I think it's okay for a certain amount of time to treat a body of work like it's basically gospel and like just really get everything that you can out of it.
I think it's better to do that than to not use any.
Yeah.
And you've read all the stuff.
I think sometimes, or my experience of it, and there's a lot of bodies of work that I've been exposed to, and I think, and you can tell me what you think about this, but I think part of what helps me, you know, being good at coaching is I'm like, okay, there's a ton of models, and I'm always like, how do I work with very common words? Like, you know what I mean? Very easy, like, hey, you're feeling tight or constricted, you're feeling loose, you're feeling open, and I'm always like, how can I just kind of slip these into like a very normal conversation? And I try to move away from the inside baseball on pretty much every body of work as soon as I feel like I've like really like wrung it dry. Because what I've seen is when I stay in a body of work for a very long time, I will start to feel a certain type of way about a certain type of word, like awareness or consciousness or whatever word. And I'm like, I have developed a felt sense for this word, and it's not going to land for other people the same way. So I know that I'm like, I need to really unhook from it and have like a broad swath of words, because we are accessing through language. So I'm like, okay, I can kind of like say this word versus say this word, and then if I'm in a body of work, it's like, no, what it feels like to be the watcher, or like what it feels like to be the aware one, and it's like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I've got to get off these words because I'm going to meet so many people that have a different context. So that's my feeling on it. That's why I try to transition. I also feel like, or my experience of you is that body of work landed so well for you and really worked for your system. And, you know, if I'm going to steel man your position, or like what someone would argue against that is like, hey, this worked for my system really well, and so I'm going to end up attracting people that are somewhat similar to me. And like at the end of the day, the best way to make a product or to like really offer something is kind of like to make it for yourself for 10 years. So like, I think that's the other argument there of like, this is going to attract the people that are like right in my lane.
I think that's really good, and I love your approach with how you're using language too. I couldn't agree more. That's why I wanted to brand the show Blue Collar Mystics, because it's like, I'm from West Georgia, surrounded by meth heads, right? Like when I teach, you know, Hicks to meditate, you know what I'm saying? Like that's...
You love that genre too, though. Like
Yeah.
Those are your folks, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I grew up around it, so it's comfortable
Yeah.
to me. But
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate and value people who work hard too. Like I worked on a tree farm for years and did, you know, a lot of
job.
manual labor, right? My back almost fell off.
Yeah.
And then just being outside in the woods and, you know, growing up around nature and stuff like that. Like I love all of that, and it infuses into this. Like, so it's a part of it. It's a part of the landscape of it. But I still think taking complex ideas and making them as simple as possible is extremely valuable. A good teacher does not pontificate all these expensive words. A good teacher takes complicated ideas and says, here's actually how to use this. Here's how to put it into practice, not just here's a theory about it, you know? But that's my heart, is to just make it as simple as possible. Whether you're really, really smart or not, it doesn't matter. Like if you're really, really smart, then you can still use a simplified definition. So to overcomplicate it, it just makes, it's kind of like ego masturbation, really.
Yeah, I've seen so many debates, like philosophy debates, where they spend, 75% of the time just just agreeing on the definition of words, and I'm like, I get it, but like you're trying to basically treat like a rusty blade as if it's a scalpel. Like it is language, and it's imprecise, and it's a fucking sound that you make. It's a fucking sound. So like you're gonna waste so much time. It's like, find the sounds that are associated for that person so that it lands for them. And it, some theory of mine here of your association with it is not going to be the same as theirs. So you need flexibility, and it's imperfect. We're literally taking a thought from our brain and getting it in your brain. Like it's not going to be a precise thing. Okay, so anyways, rabbit hole on bodies of work aside. So let's talk about, we get out last night.
I like it.
And I didn't want to do it. Your energy was really good, like kind of during the day. Yep. And you'll agree, like, hey, not enough sleep and a couple other things. Like if those had been, if good sleep had been had, it probably would have rolled right in. So we're out at the party, and I turn to you and I'm like, I feel like your energy is kind of like an 8 out of 10. And I've seen you at a 10, I've seen you at a 9, but I was like, I can tell that like you're really close to it. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, I was a little tired, and I got there. You know, you first get to a party, right? Like it's overwhelming. There's all these new people. I didn't know anybody other than you at the party.
I knew one person there.
So like, and then our group that we went with, we didn't like know a lot of people there, right? So like we had a little crew, which super helpful, by the way. Like,
Super helpful.
that you feel already more comfortable in the setting because it's like, okay, well,
we've been chatting it up already. You're not just walking in cold.
Yeah, and then you have people you're like, I can return to my group. If you know, I can retreat and return to my group if someone is, you know, if a conversation doesn't go well or whatever, right? Like you have like this center that you can, you know, kind of use to recharge. You know, it's like you have your little orbital planets of people. So we had our little 5 people that we went to the party with, and then you know we're all kind of going around and talking and dancing. DJ was really good.
DJ was great.
But it's always overwhelming just walking into a party or a club or whatever.
Is it always for you?
Yeah, it is. And like again, I'm an introvert, so it's like all this stimulus.
Label.
It's a lot, you know? Yeah, right. But it's a lot. It's just a lot going on. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of energy. Well, maybe I'm an empath, you know, too. So I'm picking up on everyone's energy, you know? But like really, I think everyone is, right?
Yeah. And I do want to, you know, there are people that really do sense more and they are more sensitive, but they really are taking in more.
Yeah, and so that's how I feel when I walk in.
We're just 2 fucking troglodyte knuckle draggers, like just so daft.
But I just walk in, you know, and it's a lot. Like my mind is processing. Here's what's going on. Here are these people. You know, what am I supposed to do, right? And so
that to me is straight linear. So I want to juxtapose your experience of walking in versus mine. So I want to share like what my experience was. Yeah. I'm curious how it is. So I was already like, you know, this is so weird, but I was like, I didn't really want to do it. I wasn't really feeling it. They come over and like it's chit chat. And in my brain, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to go to this place. I don't really know anyone here. I'm supposed to be leading this group. Do I knock on the door? Do I not knock on the door? Like, is it, you know what I mean? Like, you know, okay, so that is how it was in my brain. Cause I'm like, I don't really know anyone except for one person here. Do I just open the door and just go straight in? Right. And then we roll up and I'm like, oh, okay. This is just a straight up party. The door's like halfway open and people are partying, and I was like, this is so weird, but that was like the only thing that I was worried about, right? And so I walk in the party and I'm like, okay, 2 things. First of all, just drinks for the girls that we came with. I'm like, step 1, drinks for the girls that we came with. Step 2, club soda for me. Step 3, let's get moving. You know what I mean? So I was like, go in. I'm like immediately, all the anxiety left my body because I'm like, oh, it's just a fucking party. Cool, we good. So I'm like, where's the ice? Where are the things? And I'm like, get them a drink, mix them a drink, mix me one. And then like, I don't know if you noticed this, but I'm like, turn from the group and like, it's just fucking, let's just start. Like, let's just fucking start. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here. And then like, we can talk about that environment, but that was my experience of it. Is like I just walk in, I'm like, oh, thank God, it's just a fucking part. Because like this is a part of the linear brain. It's like no, this could be you're leading this group, and like you have to knock on the door, and it could be quiet, it could be terrible, it could be like da 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 da. And I think what happened for me is my brain had come up with all of these things, and as soon as I saw the door like open and the DJ, I was like, oh, I forgot. Brain, you're wrong about everything. Like, we're good to go here. You know what I mean? So I felt like that was my experience of it. And also, I felt like it was very important. And I don't, you know, that's why I want to juxtapose it with your position. I felt like it was very important for me to immediately start talking to people immediately and not just stick with the comfort. So I was trying to capitalize my brain switch, like, oh, you were wrong about everything? Then you're going to be wrong about thinking that you shouldn't. So I was just like, oh, as soon as I see a cute girl, compliment her. As soon as I see an attractive guy, I'm like, looking good. Like, probably the first, like, 4 people I complimented were all guys. You know what I mean? I was like, damn, dude, you look awesome, man. I'm like, that jawline, I was like, get out of here. Someone get this guy out. You know what I mean? Just immediately. I'm like, we need to roll into it. So that was my experience of it. And yours?
Much slower, much more resistance, much more like, oh my God, there's all these people. Are they gonna,
Hate you.
hate me? Yeah, exactly.
Throw it out the party.
You get out of here, sir.
Yeah.
But no, went out and started talking to, even though it was kind of clunky at first. And then I met a girl that we were talking, joking, that started happening. So the momentum started to roll a little bit. And I kind of see it in waves too. It's sometimes a good momentum and then it will slow down. And there was one girl that I started talking to who was like dressed like a cat, and she was laughing so hard at everything I said. And I was like, oh my, I'm killing right now. I need to be writing this down. Well, turns out.
On mushrooms.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Same thing happened to me because she was like laughing so much. I was like, God, I'm so
like,
funny.
Why are you
giggling? And then she was like, I'm
so
on
giggly.
mushrooms. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, the waves thing is interesting to me. So I have found that as long as I don't stop dancing, that doesn't happen. So I found like, yes, you're going to have the ebbs and the flows of the conversations, like, because like, there's a dance partner involved. But last night I'm just like doing this the whole time, and you're even like, that's Todd's like only move. And I'm like, it's just kind of like my go-to, like I'm just going to keep moving and I'm going to keep the energy and keep everything flowing. And I found that it doesn't do this as much now. Like,
I think that's exactly correct for me.
And there
too.
were even a couple girls last night that I'm talking to, and I can kind of feel like it's getting a little bit boring, and I'm just like, I just start dancing even though I'm talking to them, because I'm like, hey, we gotta, you know what I mean? So I have found that to be a great placeholder, like a very simple dance move that kind of like keeps you going to the music, because I do find that if I just sit and lean, the energy absolutely goes down. Like if you're not talking with and it's not realistic that you're going to be flirting with a girl every single moment of everything. It's not even realistic that you're going to be talking to another human. Like,
right.
There are gaps.
Well,
you know?
I feel stressed when I'm not talking, right? Like it's like, okay, well, I know if I'm talking to somebody, I've got something going, that's great. And then when I disengage from that person, I'm like, okay, like a little panic feeling comes in, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to talk to somebody else. Otherwise, I'm going to lose the momentum that we built, from this whole thing being an interaction.
So let's switch that.
Yeah.
Like I have found that just a very simple dance move of like moving keeps, and I think you'll probably agree with this relatively, which is like it does keep the energy moving in the body. It keeps you moving to the music. Like I'd be interested for you to test it, because I used to feel the same way. Like I would be social and I'm chatting, and then it's like a fucking timed meter thing, and it's like, oh no, and then like right, and I don't think that actually creates the free flow. And like if I'm just like dancing, and it's like a simple dance move, it's not even that great, but what I'll see is like I'm just a guy here just dancing, and like eventually a girl will look at me and I'll be like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But I found that to be
guy.
the best way to keep, because like I feel like as soon as you switch into that energy of like, oh no, then like you're trying to control too much, you're getting back in your brain too much. And I guess what I'm trying to share here is that like moving my mouth and making sounds and exchanging energy with a person is one way to keep a vibe. And then like actually like, we're very tied into music. I mean, it's also sounds, and it's like moving to the sounds. And you don't even have to be good at dancing. You can just have a very simple kind of move. But I found as soon as I'm just like this and I'm just standing there, the same type of thing happens to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like motion creates emotion.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another thing too. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. A lot of times I go to a place, they're playing music that I'm completely unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
Like if they were playing "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough" by Michael Jackson,
You're
I'm
gonna
like,
sing it.
Unbelievable. You'd be shocked. You're like, who is this man? Like, did he study dance? Like, I will move like you've never seen. You're like, how is this lumberjack pop locking and dropping it on the dance floor right now? But if it's unfamiliar music or like house music, it's just boom, boom, boom. Like, it doesn't give me that visceral excitement.
Okay, so let's talk through this. So
with.
there are some genres of music that I don't feel like are great for you, like heavy metal, like screamcore. You know what I mean? I think if you're doing really heavy weightlifting, or you're doing something where like you're really pushing a HIIT workout, I get it. So generally, you're not going to go to an environment that's going to be playing that. Generally, they're going to play some sort of music where the vibe is like relatively good, right? like I don't know what genre, but they're gonna play something where the vibe is relatively good. You're not gonna go in and they're gonna be playing like this
Emo.
fucking guar or whatever. Yeah, like or emo, right? Okay. So that being the case, I feel like it's important to have a simple move that works with pretty much every genre. And that's why I kind of do this one where I'm just like this, because it's like, okay, if it's house, I can just kind of like slow it down. And then if it's a little bit faster, I can go like, I feel like for you, what would benefit you really well is, this is going to sound so lame. So just, fucking go with me here. Having your tall length mirror and just like, playing a song, you know what I mean? Or you can like YouTube like a couple very simple dance moves and find the one that like will really work for you. And make sure that it will work across pretty much every genre. So if I go in and if they're playing really loud dance music, like you can just fucking, whatever, you can move to that. But what you're saying is like, well, what happens when it's like these other ones? I'm like, it's very important to have like a very simple one that kind of like keeps you moving. It doesn't even need to look that good. But like if someone sees us out, they're going to be like, that guy just is like just always dancing. Like he's either flirting with a girl or flirting with a guy. Literally, like he's either flirting with a guy, he's either flirting with a human or dancing or sometimes both.
And in your costume last night, you wanted to be maybe a little bit careful for guys.
Yeah, I was asking for it.
It was so funny, dude.
I do, hey, do you? Like, I'm not big on giving advice, but like that is a thing that I've seen that's really helped me a lot. And if you looked at me last night, like, I think you'd be like, okay, he seems to be like pretty flowing. Like it's like, and it is just because in the pauses, I'm just like doing this. I'm sure you looked over and you're like, he's just dancing, staring at no one, not really doing anything. And it's like, yeah, I just feel like keeping it moving, not saying that you can't ever sit still. It just seems like your brain opens more.
I think so. I think that's definitely true. And, for people out there too, like who are maybe a little uncomfortable, right? Like if you're really in your head, then you're self-conscious about the way you dance, and those types of things. So it's like, I get really excited when I hear a song I know, I'm familiar with, and I can move really well to it because I'm just enjoying that song. But when it's something that's unfamiliar, it's a little bit more difficult. But I think that's just like have like a go-to move.
Have just a go-to move that'll work, whether they're playing reggaeton or whether they're playing EDM or whether they're playing house. And like it just kind of works for all genres, because what percentage of time am I going to know the song? Like 5%? I guess that's not a viable strategy.
No, not at all.
And I'm not like, my dance move isn't a sexy dance move. It's just moving.
Yeah.
Totally. So okay, so you're in that. So you kind of feel like because you're sleepy, it's like, okay, you're kind of an 8 out of 10. So did you eventually shift more? Like kind of how did you deal with that, or what was your...
Yeah, I don't know. I was probably there most of the time. I mean, there were some ebbs and flows, but I don't think I really got much above an 8, But people were actually coming up to me too, So I think our energy too is now getting to the point where people just feel comfortable naturally approaching us too. It's like we've gone up so much, and then you probably don't even realize it yourself, but it's like now people are coming up and approaching you and talking to you. And so that happened a couple of times. There were a couple of really cute girls that came up and just started talking to me, and then we'd talk and have a conversation. It didn't feel like as much pressure as when we're in an environment that's completely like a public bar or something.
Let's talk about that. Okay. So we went to a house party. I got invited from one of my good girlfriends, Jess, love you, thank you. Thank you. Easiest environment. And yeah, I want your opinion on kind of the dangers of it being such an easy environment. So we went to a house party, tons of attractive girls, and it was hosted by a guy and a girl, and the guy that hosted was gay. So we show up, and it's all these attractive girls and then gay guys. Yeah. So it's like the vibes are really good. There's literally no competition. There's like all of these attractive girls that we're not getting hit on all night. And then it's kind of like assumed like cool, like, so right. It like everything opened so easy, starting conversations was so easy, and a little bit inside baseball, but like getting the conversation to actually hook, where there are times as a guy you're like talking to a girl and the minute you stop talking, she walks away. So like a conversation hooking, quote unquote, is like you're talking and then you can just kind of chill and she'll add. And I was telling you, I was like, this is like just the easiest. Like we are used to like to just get it to finally shift, but in that environment, way easier. So I feel like the pros of that for a guy is like, I don't know how realistic it is that they're going to recreate that environment. Like that's a very nice environment. The thing that would be second close would be a party where the ratio is really good, right? So a party where it's like one guy for every 2 or 3 girls. And then I think it will create kind of the same thing, you know. But we were at that party and like some of the hottest girls were just like not being talked to, and I'm just like, okay, that's rare. And so this is gonna sound weird, but like I had some like fear because I was like, hey, this is really easy, and this is not something that's gonna happen that often. And so now I'm like wanting to like kind of like control and like get more of those, you know, things in there. So I don't know what's your.
Well, I think being at a party too, like it's exclusive, people have been invited, so naturally they're going to be a little bit more open. The likelihood that you're going to walk up to somebody at a party and they're going to snub you or say something rude is far lower. In most environments.
Like I have to say, I've been to house parties where the ratio is flipped and there's more guys than girls, and like the girl, it's not good.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even though, you know what I mean? So I think part of what really opened up that dynamic is it was like there were no heterosexual males. So it was just attractive women and no, you know what I mean? They're like, that's why they're coming up to you.
Right.
Because they're just like, that guy looks straight. You know what I mean?
That lumberjack looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and yeah, that's a good point.
I still agree there's relatively a buy-in, but I do want to.
It's like not the same as like walking up to somebody on the street is kind of my point. It's like people are going to have because you know you come to this thing and it's a little bit more exclusive. People are invited, so you like kind of assume that like they belong there. They didn't crash the party.
I need to get in touch with them to like redo another one.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Like those two, they threw a great party.
It was awesome.
I really should have talked with the host more. That is something that I dropped the ball on.
Well, there's a lot of things that I feel like I could have done better, and go, you know, moving forward the next time, it's like other ways to improve and do better and just be more
linear,
more social,
yeah.
You know, and just engage more with everyone as much as you can. But it's an energy thing too.
Yeah, so I want to be fair to yourself and your system. I think the badge that I had, I did my best. Like I think really honestly you did. Like I think coming in with, you know, your body, like I really do think I don't think you could have done better. Like, you know what I mean? I think you were coming off a night or two of like having not slept. And so I think for the context and the setting, I think you did fantastic. Like
it was fun. Everyone I talked to, I felt like, you know, it was good interactions all the way around. You know, it didn't get super weird there, you know, at any point or whatever. So I think overall, yeah, it was great. Things can always be improved, iterated, improved, and that's a good thing to keep in mind. That's part of what we were talking about at the beginning of this. It's like, you want to do everything perfect. It's never going to happen, but you can get a little bit better and then a little bit better and then a little bit better. It's like, that's it. And then the breakthrough comes after you've done a little bit better, a little bit better. And you're like, holy shit, I'm like a different person.
Yeah.
And you are.
And I want to get through the night and then I want to get through the postmortem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I want to finish on what your thoughts are about house party versus cold approach, right?
Okay.
So like this is like an age-old debate, and by age-old I mean like literally the last like 15 years. The internet came, cold approach versus house party. I can unequivocally say that your results and your ROI on the house party well set up with like good ratio, or you need to reach out to them and definitely do the homosexuals to girls, unequivocally better. And also I feel like doing cold approach and going up to people that you don't know to start conversations is so good for you to get out of your head and like go into nonlinear, because you just realize that like, all the stuff that you're working on and everything, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, so I feel like there's this kind of like, this process of like shedding stuff via cold approach. And I can just imagine like you become the guy that like just does the parties and like you really lose your ability to like engage, you know? And so I don't know if there's like a right balance here. And also it's like, it's not like you're going to be able to create these parties all the time, right? Like a really good environment like that might happen every couple of months, you know what I mean? So I don't know, like what are your thoughts on this versus this, and like the guys that just say like, hey, it's just the house parties and the events, and like that is, you know, that is unequivocally the better ROI, and you shouldn't even waste your time doing this.
I mean, it depends on what your goals are. That's what I feel. Like if your goal is to improve as a person and grow, then jump in there and cold approach, right? Like if your goal is to just get laid and meet girls, then go to the house parties, because you're going to have a lot more of an opportunity, I think, in that environment to do those types of things. Just
their game is going to be fucking dog shit though.
It's true.
If you're a guy that just does that, it's like, okay. And they'd be like, yeah, but I'm getting laid through this. And I'm like, I mean, kind of. But, like, I think what I would say for guys is, like, there's a lot of transferable skill sets here. And if you're just house party guy, there's not going to be any. Now, if you're a cold approach guy and then you transition into it, like you're gonna crush.
It's like open mics. It's like doing open mics as a comedian. There's 4 people there who want to stab you in the parking lot as soon as you're done with your set. And if you can make them laugh, when you get into the clubs, you're going to absolutely murder. So it's the same kind of thing. And also, I'll throw out there that like from cold approach, I've had opportunities that have nothing to do with dating that have elevated my business and given me, you know, amazing results in other areas of my life that have zero to do with
same. I mean, that's how we got invited to this party.
Yep.
You know,
that's
like,
it.
And then I ran into another girlfriend. Those are the girls that came with us. It's like, it came from going out.
Yeah.
Like it came from going out and being social in those spots. So I think that's another way to frame it, where it's like these other types of events that you want to go to that are really set up. How do you think you're going to find them? Going out,
right,
and socializing at the good spots, and you will eventually start to meet people, and eventually you'll be able to, you know, get access to those. So.
You meet people, you befriend them, they become part of your social circle, like,
and then you fuck them.
Sometimes, you know, and then if it's a friend, it's a friend. Hey, we have a friendly relationship. Let's be friends, you know. And I mean, hey, look, play it however you play it, but like. For me, like I have a ton of amazing female friends in my life. I cherish them. They're great. And we talked about this actually one night where you were kind of like, hey man, if you're, you know, thinking about this girl you have a crush on, you're giving all this energy to, it's like, what about the great women in your life who need you and need your masculine attention? And I'm like, man, that is really good. You're like, until she's in, you know, in your space and you're sucking each other's tongues down each other's throats or whatever, assume that, you know, it's not gonna happen necessarily. It's not real yet. So don't get a crush on this idea of a person who may or may not even be in your life when you've got like great women around you that you can nurture the relationships with them. You know, your sister, your mom, whoever that winds up being, your female friends. You know, so to me, it's all of that, right? And in the dating and all that kind of stuff too. Those results, you know, you have a good female friend. This is a great guy. He's awesome. She's going to brag to her friends about you and be like, oh my God, you got to meet. You guys would really get along. And that's how I think you would more likely find someone who is really suited for you and your type. Whereas the cold approach thing is like, what are the odds? You know, like out of the dozens of girls, there's one, you know, and we're both so busy. It's hard to pin down a time to see her.
Yeah, I'm starting to like on the cold approach thing. Okay, so this leads me to another thought that we had this week that we kind of discussed, which is like guys will be very linear. Like I'm doing the cold approach to get this girl, result. To get this girl. Yeah, and so I really like the frame of assume that the girl that you're actually going to get into a relationship with is going to be introduced to you by another girl. And then go out and do cold approach. Like, keep in mind that, like, this is probably the way, and, like, do this. Because I think guys are like, no, I need to be able to go up to the bar and and then she's back in the bedroom, and I'm like, you've watched Wedding Crashers like 12 too many times.
Yeah,
it's
dude.
like, just assume that the quality of woman that you want to be with, you're going to be introduced to her by a female friend, and go out and do cold approach. Like, you know what I mean? That's my feeling on the best way to actually blend the two.
I agree,
Yeah.
because you're sharpening your skills. And again, it depends on what your goals are. If you're just looking for a girlfriend and that's it, you don't want to improve yourself and challenge yourself and see yourself grow and go through all the fucking trauma that's going to come up, like what we're doing, then fine. Just, no big deal. But if you do want to genuinely push yourself and challenge yourself and become like the most epic version of yourself, then jump face first into the meat grinder and let's fucking go.
Yeah, one of the experiences I've had with you is like, now that we've been going out sober and doing it, like even over these past couple months, I feel like I'm able to bring it. And then not at the level of, the teachers and people that we're kind of like, shooting for, but like when I look across the other guys there, I'm like, what other guy was like really in competition with me outside of the most handsome guy there? So it's like, okay, here's the most handsome guy here, and then here's me. I'm fine with that, but I just feel like I'm able to bring a level of like energy, interaction, presence, like everything that they're not. And that doesn't mean that I'm perfect. And like there were still some girls, like the girl that I really liked, where I just could not get it to fucking do anything. You know what I mean? So
it's funny how that kind of is a thing. It happens to me too. It's like,
if the girl likes cocaine, there's nothing I can do.
And I think that's a really good point.
Like, it just is that way. Like, if you get that vibe that this girl is like definitely down to do blow and likes to do blow, like, don't even fucking waste your time, because it's just you're not going to be able to compete with it.
There's the surface thing, there's attraction on the surface, and then for both genders, male, female, both, right? Like, and then there's the backside of everything. Sorry, bad choice of words. But then there's, the person, the personality, like they're who they really are, like. So we're meeting people in this container. It's sort of shallow, right? And that's fine. But then you have to get to know the person and see who they are on the other side, like at a deeper level. And so it's real easy to just look at someone and be like, oh, that's an attractive person, but you don't know anything about them. They don't know anything about us either, too. So it's like we're trying to match it up, too, where it's like, you can meet me and be like, wow, this dude can demonstrate that he's a great guy, right?
Yeah,
How do you figure out how to demonstrate the person that you are in a surface interaction so that when you do start dating or getting to know someone, you are representative of what you put forward, and you have, great skills and a lot of really positive attributes as a partner, as a man. Right? And so there's the two elements. So what we're really working on is the front end part of it, where it's like, hey, I'm trying to demonstrate who I am to you so you can see who I am, because I am a great guy. Like on the back end, I know that, and of course, plenty of work to do there too, but it's that full package. So a lot of guys will be the most handsome guy there. It's so easy. Is there any depth to their personality? Are there, there's a billion boxes to check at that point.
Let me get your feedback on this end. So like so let's talk about one of the girls for me, right? Where it's like, okay, she to me was the most attractive girl there. Like, unreal for me personally. Everyone has their own thing, and like, that's great, right? And so I kind of want your advice or your feedback on it. It's like, okay, my vibe is pretty good. I wasn't a 10 out of 10 God mode. Okay? I was like a 9. Like a solid 9 out of 10.
You were a good 9.
The vibe was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I come over, I flirt, I introduce myself, I get her to scooch, I sit down, her friend comes up behind me and like straddles me from the back, and then she's like hugging onto me, and I didn't feel like that comfortable. Like I didn't feel, I was like, oh man, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm joking around a little bit. I don't feel like it's totally hooking, but we're still kind of chatting. I really don't feel like this is hooked. I really don't feel like this is hooked. And like, eventually the girl behind me kind of like got up and left, which is just a very clear indicator to me that like my energy, I'm not at God mode. You know what I mean? And I'm like, this girl was already here doing this. So, my feeling on it was like, I don't really know what I could have done different. Because I'm like, 9 out of 10 is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, the expectation of you're going to hit God mode every night, like, that's like, I don't even know. That doesn't happen to me as much. And maybe, like, there are guys that are like, hey, here's how you really get there. Keep in mind, we're sober. I've already flirted with a good number of girls, right? I'd already left my group and my comfort zone and gone around and flirted a bunch. And then I go over and I go in. And, like, this girl comes, and I'm like, my vibe isn't even like sexual enough to hang. So I'm like, what could I have done different? And even now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, probably on some amount of drugs that makes like even the friend coming up behind me, like spread eagle, and then like right here, it's like, no way that girl's doing that completely sober. And by the way, that isn't just alcohol. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like my vibe isn't God mode where it's like that would just happen if you're in that vibe. And so I kind of found myself in this situation where I'm like, have these girls around me, but I don't feel that like, so what, and you saw some of the interaction, you saw some of what occurred.
I saw you guys dancing, together, like
downstairs. Well, did you see me when I was upstairs
I
with
did
them on
for
the couch?
just a minute, yeah.
And like looked over, and so like I did, a story or two, and like I kind of flirted, but like even this girl, like kind of, my vibe wasn't just there yet, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how realistic it is to hit that space every time. And maybe that's something I can drop where it's like, hey, you should, not should, but like the ability to hit God mode is there at all moments. Like, you are an extension of that. And that's, you know what I mean? And I think there was a decent amount of sexuality, and I wasn't in that energy yet, and they could kind of feel it, and I could just not get it to hook. And like, I'd gone in, I flirted, I did content, I did a story, I go dance, I come back, I come dance again, they see me talk to other girls, I'm like, still not?
What else can you do? I think at that point, especially if drugs are involved, it's like, for you guys to connect on a real vibe level, it may not just even be possible, especially if it's a drug like cocaine or ecstasy or something like that, or even, hallucinogens. Like, how are you really going to connect deeply there? And, they're just going to be over here. And like, even if you hit God mode.
I think God mode's the only one, basically. I mean, we're using that as a blanket term, but
right.
like where your vibe is so good sober that like you're able to move into that sexual energy very, very easily. And I think for me, I was like, okay, like, not there. Like,
I mean, I think you did everything you can, and it's like that Bhagavad Gita thing, where it's like you take the action and then you just let go of the results.
But even the girl that was like straddled around me, I was like, oh, what do you like? And I'm like, dude, this is, you know what I mean? Like, I can already tell. And I was like, well, maybe I could have flirted with some more girls,
But no, I mean, if there's someone that you're attracted to, I think you give them the priority of your attention, right? Like, and then you talk to everyone at the party.
I think I could have flirted with their friends more, because like part of for the gals is like what their friends think, right? So like really work that more than the actual girl that you're talking to. Like, if I got her friends, like, oh my God, who is this guy?
Yeah, he's great. Blah blah. Oh, you should hang out with him. Then they're encouraging her to hang out with you.
Just
now that's
did not hook.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you when you look at what I've shared, is there any advice that you would give?
Honestly, I think you handled it well. I mean, what can you do? I think there's just such a discrepancy with the drugs, and it's almost an impossible battle to fight. Like you said, if you're at like 10 out of 10 mode and you're just like, completely open, maybe. But even still, it's like, I don't know. And this is just my opinion. I'm not like anti-drug or anything, but it's like, I don't really want that whole thing, because it's a whole thing. And I know...
You make a good point.
I know it. And I know what that wants is just more of what it already
you make a very good point, which is like, I'm like, oh, how do I get this right? And that in my head, the dialogue was like, well, I guess I need to learn how to get into God mode all the time, which like, it is a great thing. And like, you know, we don't want to get too controlling over it, but I think doing all of the things to open yourself up more and more is absolutely the right call. But you make a really good point, which is you are trying to get in alignment with something
that you really don't want to
really
be,
gonna be in alignment with you.
Like, you don't really want to be in that alignment either, because you're going to be driving around at 4 a.m., you know, going to some sketchy house.
Not anything that I want to do at all.
You know
what I mean?
Do you have a gun? You know,
and I'm like, ooh, here, I want to be able to be in touch with sexuality immediately. It's like, they're not either, homie. Like, that is not what's occurring. What's occurring is they've taken a little bit of MDMA and they put a little bit in their drink or whatever. I don't think it was cocaine based off the fact they're more relaxed, but I was like, there does seem to be a little bit of Molly involved. And so they're like into this sexual energy and they can feel that I'm not, but it's like, hey, I'm totally sober and I'm somewhat able to get access to it.
It's so weird because like even people who are drunk, right? Like you see somebody who's visibly drunk and it's just like, I'm immediately like turned off by that. Now I can get drunk, you know what I mean? And then if I was drunk and the person was the same drunk or drunkish or on the same level, it kind of works together in that way. But when there's that weird discrepancy, it's like it just doesn't seem to match, you know? And so like if people are going to do that, it's almost better like, oh, well, we'll just do this together. And then there's like the match of it or whatever. But when someone's already on that roll, that the girl's on mushrooms or whatever, and she was hilarious. Like, it was so funny to watch her laugh and just, she was having a great time. And I'm like, you're really courageous to eat mushrooms at a party like this. I would be in my head in tremendous amount.
Tremendous.
There's no way I could pull that off.
You're bringing up another really point. So we'll close that one for now, which is like, you know, have the goal getting to that very open mode. And you know, you don't want to make a god out of that state or that emotional state, and work towards it. And if you're in an environment that's like super advantageous for you and you are pretty close to that and it's still not hooking, it's probably drugs. So like, and you're not that in alignment with you because you're not going to stay out to 4 a.m., even though we did stay out to 4 a.m.
Well, yeah, we did.
With that type of an energy and a vibe. And like, I'm not going to be a fit for you short term, or long term.
Or long term, right.
Okay, so we're going to close out, and I want to shift to something else, but before I do, I want to bring up this point, which is, I have found that going out sober, when you are vibing with a girl, and she finds out that you're sober, I feel like it's an even add, like you become even more attractive in your mind, especially when you ground in, you go, I'm not drinking. So like, this is me. Like, I am this flowing and all of the energy that you're feeling in this confident on a Tuesday.
It's not going to go away when we see each other for coffee.
Yeah, so
I found this person.
I found when girls found that out, they were even more attracted. And I don't think that's something that men know. Like, it's like they're like, no, I need to drink to make them comfortable. And I'm like, when they find out that it's like, who the fuck has the ball? Nobody here is sober, homie. And it's not that we need to be sober. We can drink. Like, we don't have a, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's not that energy, which no hating on it. It's not that energy of like, I have a problem with this and therefore not. It's like, no, I can do it just fine. And I'm just showing up like a fucking stud. And I found that it like, girls are like, when they find out that you're just totally sober, they're the girls that are like still really on an unhealthy path and they're like, I feel judged and whatever. But like the actual legit girls are like, damn, dude. And then like when I like grounded in of like, this is me, homie. Like, you are, you know, having a couple drinks, you get into this, like, this is me. Like, outspoken, loud, dominating, fun,
force.
Outgoing. Yeah, like a fucking force of nature with, like, no fucking substance involved.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so contrast that to what your conception before was
like,
drinking.
oh, this is going to make it a loser, and, like, they won't be fucking into me.
Right.
And, like, they won't like it, and I'll be the awkward one, and I'll be the weird one.
Why aren't you drinking? What's the matter with you?
I could not be more wrong. Especially when you point out that, like, I'll turn my voice up, and I'm like, this is me, homie. Your boy's out. Like, this vibe carries through. Like, I feel like when you really like land down on that like your energy is fucking clean, I feel like the girl's like, oh, this is a fucking man.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is just like taking all of this in, and just like, I'm like, who else? Who else is going into parties completely sober, not because they have an issue with it, but just because they want to be fucking clear.
Right.
And then hitting on every girl there.
Right.
None.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah, you make a very good point, which is the old rhetoric used to be like, it'll be
I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, people are going to think I'm weird. They're going to roll their eyes. The bartender's going to be mad. But I was a bartender for years. So like people come in and order a soda. I'm like, here you go, buddy. You know, no worries. I'm making rent tonight. I'm not worried about your $2 tip on a soda water or whatever. You know, here you go. Or like, it's not, we have this conception about it, you know, just because it's so prevalent in our culture that people are going to judge us for not drinking. So I don't want to pollute myself with toxic alcohol, which sometimes, like you said, we do. It's not like we're like going to meetings and
shit. Not like I'll never do it.
Right. But it's like, I don't want to do that. I want to have a clean experience. I want to remember what happened. I want to be able to learn from it. I want to be able to sit here and talk to you and debrief about what happened so that we can improve ourselves and the situations that we find ourselves in. Like, that's so much, like, it's thousands of % better than the norm, which is to just go out and get drunk and cross your fingers and hope that you talk to somebody.
Yeah, and I think I'll play with it more, right? Because like, I'm just like, these other men out here are pussies. Like, when I'm talking to the girl, I'm like, they need to take a couple drinks to take the edge off. What are you doing? Step up, be a fucking man. Like, just roll into the party. And the girl's like, okay. Well, definitely. This guy could have my babies. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that was interesting. Okay, so we talked about advice for me. So that was, and you gave me some good context, which is, it is good to shoot for that open state and also understand that if you are feeling that, like, really sexual energy very, very immediately off of the girl, and like if it's happening in a very deep interaction because you're just on straight God mode, that's one thing. But if you're not even there yet and it's happening, then like that girl is probably on something. And you made the good point of like, you're not going to be in alignment with it. Not short term even that night, or long term, you're not going to want it to quit trying to be in alignment. So that's really good feedback from you. So let's talk about your situation or anything that happened to you that you would like feedback or to kind of debrief on, if any.
Yeah, and just in the moment, like...
You're perfect. Oh, next segment.
Nailed it. No, just like in the moment, being a little bit more of a salesman, honestly. Like being able to have like fun arguments to throw in there. Like, what if we did this? Or let's do that. Or, hey, blah, blah, blah. Like, here's an idea. Instead of just being like, oh, well, here's the situation, and I kind of feel frozen, right? Like by it. And maybe leading more too. Just being like, hey, look, we could do this or that, or what if this? And it doesn't have to be like a forceful, we're doing this thing, like command, but just like to lead and guide and move an interaction in a direction toward more chemistry, you know, maybe a kiss or whatever, right? Because those things can happen fast when the vibe is there, but it's like it's up to me as the man to sort of initiate that.
So let's talk. So share more about this. Like share more about kind of what your perception is, or how you're feeling, or like.
Well, let's say like that I'm in an interaction with a girl and it's going pretty well, and she likes me. The signs are there, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, where do I take this? You know, like. Should we have a little fun adventure and go like sneak around and kiss behind the, you know, the plant over here, or, you know, just like little playful fun things like that to just push the interaction to more physical escalation. You know what I mean? Like to more fun. And it's like, I just don't, yeah, I just, sometimes I get a little stifled. I don't know where to go next. You know, it's like I know where this is supposed to go, and I know it's my responsibility to take it there. But sometimes I'm just not really sure how to do it, or like what some ways to just open those moments up and get around what the initial objections, you know, might be. Not that I'm trying to convince anybody to do anything that they don't want to do, but finding ways to say, hey, look, I know you want to do what you want to do. I do too. How can we, you know, make it a fun adventure.
Okay, so what do you think about this? So there is so first there's a perception that there's somewhere to take it to, right? And I do want to acknowledge kind of like what that goal is. And I want to take a stab at like what it is, which is an increased feeling of energy, of attraction, chemistry, and vibe reciprocated between the two of you. So would you say that that's like relatively kind of like where you're trying to move it to? Like,
yes,
we're here,
right,
and I want to move it towards more of an energy of attraction,
more
chemistry,
sexual energy.
Okay.
I'm good at building friendly energy. I'm good, I've got that. That's fine. But like taking it and building it, making it more attraction, type of sexual energy, chemistry. If it's already there, finding ways to,
open it up
and yeah, start working in that.
So what's your relationship with that energy in your own system?
That's a good question. Like, as far as, just feeling it.
Yeah, because I think part of that frame is that like that energy is like outside of you, or it exists in them, and that you need to. Whereas my kind of context and feeling for this is like, this is something that like I generate. Like there is some input, like there is an attractive female in front of me, and that like starts to add to it. But I kind of feel like all of the nervous energy in the beginning and all of that kind of like starts to build and coalesce into that like very present, grounded, like sexual energy. And it's not a getting type of sexual energy where people feel like this guy's trying to get sex, but they just can kind of feel that like, okay, this is going to sound fucking weird, and it isn't always this way, but like I'm feeling me.
No, I
you know what I mean? Where
I
I'm
do,
like,
actually.
I'm like, I
Yeah.
feel fucking sexy. I feel fucking more connected, grateful, like all of the things. And there is a component, I do want to, it's dyadic, right? So like, I'm not saying that there isn't a counterpart there. I'm just saying in the way that I approach it, or one of the things that I try to play with is, okay, how do I cultivate this? And we were just talking about God mode and like being, and I'm like, they were really sexual and I wasn't there yet. And like, if you listen to my language there, it's like, I wasn't there yet. Not like, how do I get this
right
to be here? I'm like, I wasn't there. And I'm like, it's in my system somewhere. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering if what your relationship is with that type of energy. Like if you can spend some time like feeling yourself a little bit, like finding that like where like you're feeling you and you're like, God, man, this body's like fucking like like it is a very sensual experience to be human. You know what I mean? I don't think that isn't there for you. I think we just normally aren't accessing
Well, yeah,
it.
I mean, we have the puritanical values too, and the way we grew up in the South, blah, 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 that like kind of puts a lid on all of that. But I think that's really good advice and feedback, because I feel like
if you're just like,
right, not George Michael, right, like in the club.
But if you're doing that to you and you're kind of like feeling myself and like whatever works for you and for your system so that you're feeling really good in your body, like I wonder if that's one thing for you to prioritize. Like you're in the interaction with the girl and you're focused on this, and I think maybe it could help to check in, be like, how do I feel in my own body? And making that like the main thing of like, I want to feel really good in my body. And I can't always, my body's going to be sick. It's going to break down, and eventually it's going to pass. You know what I mean? So I'm not expecting it to always, but like putting the focus on like, how am I feeling in my own body, and like kind of like spinning that up for you. I'm wondering, I don't know, what are your, that's kind of where I think
that's really good. I think that's really good feedback.
I'm not saying that will or won't work. Like you got to experiment for you.
It's something to kind of keep in mind and just keep a tab on, because it's, I guess I look at the external things like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, blah, 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 you know, and it's like, well, hold on a second. Like, if it's coming from a place, then those things should kind of happen on
they
their
will be
own.
responding to it. Yeah, so
Right.
this is my thing. So like I feel like the guys that just get the most girls
Back
like,
to linear, it's like, well, I have to do this, and then I have to do this,
That's
and then
my
we
point.
escalate the thing.
Whereas the guys that are like really good at it, they're like, man, I'm fucking like that.
Yeah.
They're full retard. Like they're just feeling themselves completely, and that's what's occurring.
That's something that I've been thinking a lot about and writing about. Is like some of the most successful people are the stupidest idiots on the face of the fucking planet, and it's mind-boggling because, like, to me, it seems unfair, right? It's like, why is this guy getting all this female attention? He's a buffoon. Like, he's an idiot. He has no skills. He has no abilities. He has no resources, but he just thinks he's the shit.
Yeah.
And he just crushes because of that self-belief.
Yeah.
And to me, that seems like a dirty trick from Mother Nature. But at the same time, like, I'm asking myself, like,
I want you to caveat the other side for them too.
Yeah, so it's like,
which is like, you don't actually want that. Like,
right.
You do want the other. So like, walk through why it's better to actually come from a grounded, self-aware and expand into that than it is just to be that.
Yeah, because your life is going to be a complete and total mess.
Fucking
it might look like
you're going to get the most girls, but you're also going to have like 7 kids with 7 different women. You're going to be like, it's bad. Like, it's great on the front end, and then it's very bad on the back end.
Right. And so what we want is the complete thing, right? And so like what I'm working on is really more that front end and that self-belief. And some of the things that I've been able to accomplish over the past couple of months have helped me to be like, okay, I can rest a little bit. I can believe in myself a little bit more. There was one, and I told you this before, there was one girl, we were talking at Ladybird one day, and we were having a good conversation. You were bragging on me, and then I was being like too humble. And then she goes, do you not believe in yourself?
Yeah.
And I was like, holy fuck. Like, I felt like I got bit by a snake. It took my breath away for a second. Because the truth is, I don't always, not in every situation, because I'm so self-aware. Now, there are certain situations that I definitely do believe in myself too, but it made me really start to ask myself some questions, did a lot of journaling, did a lot of thinking about it. And I'm taking that and saying, okay, what can I put in my head to know, like, I am awesome, I am a great guy, blah, 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 so that I have that. But then on the backside, I'm not completely unself-aware to where I'm a total wreck and just believe that I'm awesome and have no actual evidence to prove it. So it's been a very illuminating experience dealing with that particular thing. And thanks for making me contrast that because it takes both. It takes both to be, it's like, I think this is your metaphor, but it's like the sales page and the product on the back end.
You want both, yeah. And then people hate it when you make business references to dating, but like it really is, like the sales and the marketing on the front end is important, right? The grooming, the charisma, right? And then like the product on the back end is fucking important. Integrity, honesty, accountability, like both are important. Like I feel like it's a really important island. So we talked about this where this wanting to put more in, and I kind of shared with you like what I'm doing, right? Which is part of feeling like I'm the shit is like allowing for whatever feeling is coming up and fully owning it. Because when I replay the scenarios where I wanted to be like, and then like I go to hit on the girl and like I'm the man, and it's like, what are you avoiding? And I'm like, oh, I'm avoiding not feeling like the man. I'm like, well, then just feel that and own that, and the energy will come out. And then like, so I'm of the mind that we are basically turtles all the way down. So this is what I believe, but like we are fucking a version of God, one version, and there's a multitude of versions. The fucking orcas and the lions and the giraffes and everything else are a version as well. But like, we're fucking God. So you don't need to add anything in, homie. Like, as you peel back the layers and you own it fully, where you take the brakes off the system, it's not that you need to add more gas, it's taking the brakes off. And so I feel there is social conditioning, and there's other things that are occurring, as there should be, by the way. Like, I'm not making an albatross, a bulwark, or whatever with it. Like, it's important. You can't have people just taking their clothes off and running. Like, we need fucking stoplights. Like, it's like you need those things. I'm not saying that those are not useful. I'm just saying that when it comes to the social context and socializing, I feel like removing the stuff is actually what allows it to occur. Not as much installing the beliefs as it is whatever the thought pattern is that, is manifesting itself as an emotion, feeling it. And there's an energy where we try to push it away and not feel it, and we try to not own it, and it's shame. And that's the breaks. And it's like when you pull it up and you just say to the girl, I feel like I'm supposed to be a man and like lead you, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just fucking out. Whatever the thing is that you feel like is the thing that you don't want them to know, you own it and you share it. And I feel like, I don't know, this is my experiment currently, but my feeling is like the more that you do that and the more that you own it, that doesn't mean that every interaction on that rung is going to like work, but I think you end up in a space where like it is much more unfettered, and you get more unfettered access to like feeling good in your body and like being in touch with your own sexual energy and like all of those things. And then when you're in touch with that, other people start to like ping off of it, and they feel like you're the source. They're the source too, but they just haven't taken the time. So I don't know, like we had this talk about that, and I was like, I want to just sit in the bedroom and create the fucking hypnotherapy thing that's gonna fucking install the and I'm like, yeah, every time I run that where like I am actually feeling nervous about a girl, it's like I just don't feel like I can avoid the growth process of feeling that feeling and allowing it to come up and allowing the energy to move through. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
No, I really like that. I like the analogy too of like everything is God. I'm sort of an animist anyway too. So,
Just out here getting God laid.
That's right, dude. But like, yeah, taking those breaks off and opening up yourself is going to be a more authentic expression as opposed to trying to add all this stuff. Couldn't agree with that more. I really think that's what it's about.
We'll see with the experiment.
The experiment is good. I actually did that last night. I was talking and I was like, and I even said almost verbatim, like, I sort of don't know what to say, or, I feel like a pressure, and...
Oh, you did?
I did say that.
So cool.
Yeah.
How did it feel? So I want to like bring your awareness to this. When you said it and you owned it, right after you did that, how did you feel in your body?
I felt better, and I think she was like nervous.
Don't even care about her thing. Like, I just want to bring the focus on what it is, which is when it came up and you just said it and you owned it, you felt better. I'm not saying that it's going to get you the immediate result. Do I think that that's the best hand to play? Like, no. I think the best hand to play is to basically be God. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think, but I do want to separate that and like just draw the awareness to the fact that you had something that there was kind of a little bit of shame around, or a little bit of like not wanting them to know, and a little bit, and you just said it and you immediately felt better.
Yes. And we talked about this before too, because like, obviously, like you're saying, like you do that in the moment, it might not be the best result, but over time,
it will be the best result.
It will be the best result.
Unequivocally.
Yeah.
Well, we feel like that is probably true.
Probably true.
We'll know after more time of doing it.
Well, I mean...
we have micro examples of
it. It's a good hypothesis.
Yes.
I'll say that. Because, yeah, it is leading you to more and more openness, more and more authenticity, less and less breaks.
I just have an image of a guy who's like, I'm just like fucking feeling myself. And like, you assume he's on fucking Molly. And it's like, he's sober, homie. Like, he is of clear mind. Like, that's a different type of... So I feel like the more that you get towards that, people will feel that. Especially the people that aren't on as many substances.
I think it will open up a vast amount of creative potential as well. You know, not only will people want to be more social with you and be more endeared to you and all of that, but like you connected to source where everything is. You're tapped in. So the amount of creative potential...
huge.
Exponential to what...
huge.
Linear working on in the thing. Again, that has its place. I'm not shitting on it.
It's also an
I have
expression
to
of
build
sorts.
systems.
Yes,
I have to
course.
make spreadsheets.
Nothing
it's just
sexier.
gonna happen. And
Guts to happen.
yeah. But by doing what we're talking about and just being honest, I think that just opens up so many more like realms.
So I love that you did that. I think it's very cool that you experimented with that and you're like, okay, I'm going to, like, whatever the thought is that's coming up that I don't want to have happen or be, just going to express that that's my feeling and my thought. I'm just going to own it. I love that you did that. And then I love that we're kind of shifting the focus a little bit to how you're feeling in your own body. And I think that would be something for you to play with and like experiment with of like, let me see if I can, cultivate, do things that are going to feel good for me to do and like open up my system. And that includes getting rejected too. That includes like it's, putting yourself out there does it too. But I think I'd be curious to see what your experience is after you do that.
Yeah.
Like moving it to the next stage. And my hypothesis is like, if you are feeling yourself, the chances are that if you're in an interaction with a woman that is initially attracted to you, that it is pretty much going to take care of itself.
I like it.
Okay, anything else from a kind of post-mortem on the night that you would...
No, I think celebrate the fact that we keep going out there, we keep doing it.
Shot
we don't
down
know.
so many times.
Yeah, shot down so many times, but we
Still
don't even know
can't get
where
laid.
this leads.
Yeah.
Who knows where this leads? So many great opportunities that don't even have to do with what we're going out to, with an intention for,
Yeah.
continue to come, and who even knows? Like, so I want to celebrate the fact that we're doing it. I'm super grateful to be able to have a partner in crime. Like, it's very nice because like, I was doing this. Yeah. When the camera stopped rolling, you guys don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Nothing below the waist.
But no, I'm really grateful and excited. I want to continue to grow and learn and
It
see
is
what
weird
happens.
that this socializing thing is such like a energy thing. Like I don't think I've found. I mean, for me, there's like surfing and there's soccer and there's like BJJ and there's a lot of other pursuits and there's other pursuits that you do too.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this one seems to have such an impact on the system. I don't understand it because most people would be like, dude, you guys are wasting your life.
Right. They would think that.
They would be like, you're going out every night? That's a waste. And I'm like, we're going out very differently, homie. But like,
that's right.
I don't know. I
don't
know.
understand it either. But
There's going to be 4 people who watch this video. Like they talk about finding your niche and it's like 6 people in the United States.
We niche down a little too much.
There's 1 person in Iowa.
No, that's fine. But yeah, no, I think one hand washes the other, right? And so with this, it adds to everything else. It's like, that's why you don't, I'm going to get everything perfect and then I'm going to find a perfect partner or whatever. Like, no, that's not how it works. You have to work on all of these skill sets a little bit at a time. Like if you do one thing, I read a meme, who knows if it's even close to true, but if you do one thing per day for 20 minutes for a year, you'll be better than like 70% of the people in that industry or whatever.
It's even more. Like,
It's probably even more.
Yeah.
But I'm dumbing it down. But like, so you take one thing and you do that 20 minutes a day and another thing and another thing and another thing, and then those things add up. I mean, I can look at it from a weight loss perspective, right? Like to lose like 45 pounds. That doesn't happen because you go to the gym one time and just go max hard for 3 hours. It happens because you go to the gym for 45 minutes a day or whatever that number is, or you get 10,000 steps in, you start there, and then you move up, and then you start jogging or fartlek training or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're like chiseled and you are in shape and you feel, So it's just building, it's like accruing, over time, a little bit at a time. And so, yeah, I am excited about that. And then the skill sets lend to each other. So for instance, stand-up comedy, right? Like if I can be in an interaction with a girl that I'm attracted to that makes me nervous and I can banter with her, well, how much easier is it going to be for me to banter with a crowd member?
I read a new word, badinage.
Badinage.
Which is it's another word for banter, but I'm like a great word.
It is. But like how
word.
much more is it going to be, or how much more easy is it going to be for me to pick somebody out in the crowd, go back and forth with them. You know what I mean? Iron sharpens iron. And that is really what it's all about.
I think what I would tell someone that goes like, oh, this like socializing, I don't even know why these guys would talk about it. And like, if I had to bucket it, I would say there's an emotional vulnerability. And I think whenever you have a body of work that requires like real dedication and work with a component of vulnerability, and that would include magicians, well, I guess we include magicians too, and musicians and comedians, where it's like, and it would include like having kids, where like there is a level of emotional vulnerability. So I think that is part of what's occurring is like in this socializing sober, putting yourself out there, there's dedication to something that has emotional vulnerability. Because I'm like, I was contrasting in my mind, I'm like, well, why isn't, the skateboarding that I did and the surfing, and it's like, that has a component of physical vulnerability. Like you're putting yourself in physical danger, But as men, if you gave a man, like you can go into a physically dangerous situation or an emotionally dangerous situation, like they're picking this every time.
Well, that's the thing. I didn't even know what that meant to, like, that a girl wanted a strong man. I thought that meant, right, like I can build a log cabin for you. No. It means...
Can though, Paul Bunyan.
Let's... pause, but like only for the right. No,
yes,
but it really it does have to do with that emotional fortitude, that emotional resilience. Like that's what a real man is.
I mean, I think it's both. To be fair, like I think being able to the physical, you know what I mean. But like back to linear, nonlinear, you
have to have that emotional resilience.
Almost every guy does this.
Have to.
Yeah, like this part is the hard part,
right.
And like they'll be like, I am tough, and I'm like, then go hit on that girl, or
Right.
Go take the instrument that you're doing and play it in front of 1,000 people, and then come back to me and tell me that you know about emotional vulnerability.
Right.
Like, so I think that's what like people won't get about the socializing. Like, well, you're just socializing. It's like, no, we're not drinking, and we are putting ourselves out there. And what we just talked about, we are owning whatever feeling is coming up that we don't want the person to know and saying it. Like. So I feel like that's probably why comedy is also such a huge growth thing for you. Like it is so vulnerable for you to do that.
Yeah, it really is. And in both facets. I mean, to the point, like I was a raft guide in class 5, Gauley River. Like I did all this adventure stuff and it was awesome. I loved it. It was a great lifestyle. Did it make me emotionally strong? No, not really.
Physically competent though.
Physically competent, and that's great.
Very valuable.
It is valuable. I'm not trying to, lessen...
Because the guy who's like, I'm so emotionally vulnerable, and like he can't change a tire, it's like...
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's not great either.
But, like get lost in the woods, Michael Scott.
Right, exactly. But I find that there's so much, and specifically with girls, that they test that emotional...
For sure. You also have this already. You know what I mean? Like you have that competence. So like for you, it doesn't even register because when they try to test it, you're like, yeah, that's not it. You know what I mean? Like, so like this is the one that you're working on.
Right. Yeah. And it does. It makes sense.
I respect that about you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I'm also very grateful to have someone who's a psycho that will go out with me and get shot down the whole time.
What's wrong with you?
Yes. And then talk about it like incessantly.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to wrap on or that you feel like we haven't touched on that you think would be interesting? Is there any energy here, I guess, left about any part of this?
No, my only concern is I hope my phone hasn't died. That's
Same.
my
Probably both dead.
Probably both dead. We didn't get this. The audio didn't work, but it was a great conversation. So
okay, so I want to cover one last thing. So let's talk about slump.
Okay.
Are you open to
we can talk about that.
Like,
sure.
Because that's something that is like big for you.
Yeah.
So you start talking. I'm going to look at the camera.
Okay. All right. So a slump. Is it still going?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Great. So here's what I think a slump is. Is it still going? That one too? All right. Great. So I think a slump.
We'll end on the slump.
All right. We'll end on the slump. Let's end on a really.
So Owen can't get laid.
Yeah. Ever.
I think this will be good for you to own and talk about and share your experience.
So what I think a slump is
let everyone know that you're a total loser.
Oh, yes. They already know.
Yeah,
They've been following my YouTube channel. They know I'm a loser.
Yeah.
But yeah, so...
And we're not trying to be pejorative here with slump, but maybe flesh it out in a way that
sure
women aren't going to be like, you're disgusting.
Well, when you come out of a relationship, it's hard to transition into single life again. Everyone will understand and relate to that.
Yeah.
you have new challenges to face, you've created a bond with someone, and you kind of can't even have feelings for another person. Or this is my experience, so I know I'm projecting using the you word, but for me, I build a relationship with someone, and it's about them, right? Like, and the connection that we have, and that closeness and the tightness, and I cannot even conceptualize having that with any other person coming out of that relationship.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. Yeah.
I think so too. And maybe not everybody, but that's how it's happened.
And then there's an additional hurdle there for guys. So talk about the additional hurdle, because like there is that most people can relate to, but then there's this other thing where like as a guy you can start to get hung up on like, man, it's been a really long time since I've been physically intimate.
Right.
And I think women can understand, like, it's kind of on the man to lead. And, like, if you're, like, so talk a little bit about what your experiences there.
For sure. So I think maybe what a slump is an expectation of failure, right? If you look at it across whatever, if you're a baseball player or a football player, you're expecting to fail. And so I think that's really what happens over time. So we have this challenge that we come out of a relationship, have all these emotions, we're trying to change that. Now we have all this pressure to meet someone and to do every single right thing in a row to lead them to, to sex, to have sex and to be intimate and to start to build a new sexual relationship with somebody. So you feel the whole entire responsibility of that as a man. And then you're battling with your own insecurities, your own, incompetence as well. You remember what it was like in other situations, and then you try and extrapolate that, but it's a new situation, it's a new person. And so there's all of these elements, and you're kind of considering them, and it's emotionally affecting you, making you more nervous, and then you continue to expect failure. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it just gets worse and worse.
My experience is it starts to like take on a life of its own, and it starts to like be this thing, and you start to feel like it's like immovable, like it's fixed in place, and like you know what I mean? That's been my experience when it's occurred with me, where I'm like, it's just like, yeah. So is that how you like, what's your experience?
So that's kind of how I felt, and with the pandemic and everything that happened over the past couple of years, all these elements, right? I'll be real vulnerable. It's like, how easy is it to watch porn when you're stuck in your house, right? And so now you kind of like get into this loop with that, and that can be very destructive. It's quite toxic to the male brain. It can cause ED, right? So now your confidence just continues to plummet, right? And so like to come up that hill, it's not a 3-month journey. You know what I'm saying? It's not a year, even a year. It's going to take a year, 2 years to overcome that slump if you've like put yourself in a position to where you basically have given up. And that's where I was. I was like, after that last relationship, I'm like, I'm giving up on women in love. Deuces, I'm out, right? So who cares? Watch porn, eat junk food. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, there's no one to impress. There's no one to care about.
Nothing matters.
No one cares about me, right? The whole nihilism thing.
Yep.
And then you get into that mentality, and eventually, for me, I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. This fucking sucks. Like, I'm not trying to live like this. Like, it's one thing to be happy single. It's another thing to be miserable and have no hope for the future, right? But if anybody's there, like, it is overcomable, right? Like, but it's gonna take some time and patience and effort to get through all of that. But I get it. I know how devastating it is to lose something that you really had high hopes for in the future. It's hard. And, so coming through that, and then it being like a slump and feeling more self-conscious and feeling like you're going to do the wrong thing, but then you have all this pressure and it has to be you and you have to lead. It's so overwhelming, and it's not something that's easily overcome.
It's also a mind fuck, because like it so feels like a thing, and it's also so not a thing.
Well, because it's both. Like, you don't want to make it about getting laid, right? Because that's kind of gross. Like, you know, as a young man, maybe it was like that for me, and notches on the bedpost, yada yada. And I've had that, so it's like I don't need to
Twice.
Right. 2 relationships, but like it's, you know, back. It's different, and my approach is different now. Like I am more interested in the process. I'm more interested in connecting with people. Right. Like it's not this purely physical thing. The physical thing is there. I want to have the physical thing just like any other human being wants to have the physical thing. So it's like focusing on the interaction itself and the chemistry, and also, you know, as we're noticing and pointing out, all these other indirect results, all these other positive benefits from putting ourselves in the fire. Those are all extremely valuable. And I think it like leads up to, and then you get accruing results just like we've talked about. And then the dam breaks at a certain point.
Yeah, so do you still feel like it's a hang up right now, or do you feel like, you know, the more you go out, because like I can kind of see the path of like, well, when it comes down to game time, then it comes back online, or I can see where like you've been opening up so much that it just kind of flows. Like, what are your feelings on it?
Well, I think there's definitely resistance there, right? Like it's new people. Like the first time I have sex with anybody, it's always a little bit uncomfortable and weird, right? Like, and then you get to know the person, you get to know what they like. They start to, you know, you start to build a real relationship in that way.
I find it really interesting that you feel and think that way.
Yeah, I don't know that everyone does, but like that's...
Yeah, I don't like, it doesn't feel weird. It doesn't feel awkward. It doesn't, like, it feels like everything is right. Like that is the feeling I have when we move towards that. I'm like, finally, the universe has finally realigned.
God is ready to
like
fuck.
yeah, like it feels like that, like everything has finally come back to like how it is.